Toby Young is the founder of the Daily Skeptic website and of the Free Speech Union. He's known Boris Johnson since Oxford, and he had a terrific tweet just an hour or so ago. If you're a lockdown skeptic, Boris's fine for breaking lockdown laws is the strongest reason to keep him in office. Why? Because it makes it politically impossible for him to impose another lockdown. Toby Young joins us now. That actually has a ruthless logic to it, because your issue all along has been that these laws were unnecessary. Boris Johnson's cavorting and frolicking actually makes the point that he didn't think they were necessary. Sunak didn't think they were necessary. Mrs. Johnson didn't think they were necessary. And that's really the issue here for you, isn't it?
Yes, I think, I've been a lockdown skeptic all along. And I think the evidence now that lockdowns do far more harm than good is pretty overwhelming. There was recently, just today, or a couple of days ago anyway, a report from the National Bureau of Economic Research, which looked at the impact of lockdowns across every US state. And they looked at the impact on COVID mortality, on education, and on the economy. And they produced a composite score for each state and ranked them from 1 to 50. And the states which did the best, not surprisingly, in the top 10 are states like Florida, Utah, Nebraska, New Hampshire. The states that did the worst, according to this composite score, are California, New York, New Jersey, the District of Columbia, Illinois. And one of the things that these researchers found, and they included a professor of economics from the University of Chicago, was that there was really no relationship between the severity of lockdown measures, the length of lockdowns imposed, and COVID mortality. There's no signal in that noise, either positive or negative. The number of COVID deaths per 100,000 were about the same in California as they were in Florida, even though California had one of the most severe lockdowns in the United States and Florida one of the least severe. So it's pretty clear that lockdowns exact appalling costs, economic costs, costs in terms of mental health, costs in terms of lost days in school by children, and have no impact, no discernible impact on reducing COVID mortality. But that's a message that the politicians are very reluctant to absorb. They don't want to admit that they made a mistake. They don't want to be punished at forthcoming elections because they made this dreadful, catastrophic error. So we have to look for other ways to try and restrain them. And I think in this is actually a great way of restraining Boris. I mean, to give him his due, he did lift all restrictions on Freedom Day last July. Yep. He came under enormous pressure to reimpose them over Christmas and resisted. And he now has, announced that he's embracing this living with COVID strategy. But the other day he did say, I'm not going to rule out imposing another lockdown. Well, I think now he has to rule it out because it would just be politically impossible for him to again ask the population of Britain to observe laws that he himself, the police have concluded, broke. That would be politically impossible for him to do. And I think that's a reason for keeping him in office. If he was replaced by Jeremy Hunt, even Michael Gove, the drumbeat for another lockdown is now becoming quite deafening from all the usual suspects, Independent Sage, NHS Panjandrums, the NHS Confederation, and so on and so forth. Someone like Jeremy Hunt or Michael Gove would have us all locked down again tomorrow. Boris can't do that because it would just be politically impossible.
Well, why doesn't he go full lockdown repentant then and announce and say, I shouldn't have had the party and I've paid my fine, but I think actually we should return all the fines we took from ordinary citizens who were fined for sitting on a park bench too long, who were fined for having two people round to their house to sit in the garden. Why all that was rubbish? There's no science behind it. Why doesn't he just announce, I was wrong, I've had my Damascus moment, and I'm going to order the police authorities to refund all that?
Well, good point, Mark. We've been promoting a petition on thedailyskeptic.org suggesting exactly that the fines should all be returned to the people that were made to pay them, and all ongoing cases against people who breached COVID restrictions should be dropped. I don't imagine that is the position Boris Johnson will adopt. I think it would be too much of a humiliation for him to say, actually, I just got this wrong. It was wrong to lock down. I should have stuck to my guns, stuck to my more libertarian instincts, resisted the overwhelming pressure, and acknowledge now that the cure was far worse than the disease. The lost days of school, the economic hardship, the closure of high street businesses, all of that was completely unnecessary. I think it would be politically very difficult for him to admit all that now. So the best we can hope for, I think, is that he effectively has his hands tied and cannot ever again, at least under his premiership, impose another lockdown.
Well, I think we ought to demand a little more of him, because your tweet makes the most basic point, which is that Joe Biden or Emmanuel Macron or Jacinda Trudeau or any of the rest of them are not in a position to be able to say, we screwed you over for the last 2 years. It was a huge mistake to do so, and we're not going to. We apologise for it, and we're not going to do it again. But Boris is actually in a position to do this precisely because he is a lockdown sinner. He's been found to have been eating cake and cavorting and gallivanting, and we were ordered to be in a gallivanting-free zone for 2 years. So he's actually in a better position to do this if he was thinking strategically than Joe Biden, Trudeau, Ardern, or any of the others. They can't back down off this thing. He can surely now.
Yes, but I think it, unfortunately, even if that would be in his long-term strategic interests, and I do think that people who don't apologise for the colossal policy mistake will be punished at the next elections when they face re-election. So you might be right about that, but having known Boris now for the best part of 40 years on and off, I can tell you that admitting past mistakes and meaningfully apologising for them is not really in his nature.
No. Tell me about it, Toby. That's very true. How's the song go? Someone left his cake out in the rain. Someone left his cake out, and he's worried it will end his reign. But he thinks of his position, so he thinks I'll ride it out, but he's not thinking of any larger service he might perform to the country on this.
Yes, I mean, I think it was one of his teachers at Eton who said that Boris's problem was that he didn't think the rules applied to him, and subsequently, I think he said, kind of echoing this comment, that his policy on cake was having it and eating it. And I think that's still his policy on cake and almost everything else. But I think he's going to have to amend that now to say, my policy on cake is having it, eating it, and if necessary, paying the fine.
Yeah. That's right. But you make a fascinating point. If you don't want lockdown back, this is the Prime Minister to keep in office. Thank you very much, Toby Young. Do check out the Daily Skeptic. I do every morning, and always find something in there that is well worth my time.